price of freedom is death. We're coming to get our check.
Black first, my brothers and sisters. Welcome to the Afro Elite YouTube channel. I am your host, Afro Elite. Before we get started, please make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell, leave a thumbs up, and share this on your various social media platforms because that helps the reach and the growth of the channel. Thank you very much. Now, Freaknik was something that was before my time, but it was something, where black people, and I'm going to give definition based off of definitions I've heard of people who've been there. If Freaknik was a thing where, black people would gather around during the summertime, it happened multiple times, not just one time, but it was a thing back in the 90s where black people would gather around, and they would kind of just getting freaky. Now, whether you agree or disagree, that's an era in our history that had happened. It wasn't a mainstream thing like that. It was no like big news coverage or anything like that. Eventually, when camcorders and when people were starting to bring cameras to record and stuff like that, when that became a thing towards the late 90s, well, no, not really the late 90s, in the 90s, and then kind of it started really amping up in the late 90s where people really started just filming everything. Then Freaknik kind of died around like I want to say 98, but that's pretty much what Freaknik was. So Hulu is going to drop a documentary on 94 Freaknik, which is very interesting. That's going to happen. The release date that they said is going to be in 2024. I find that very interesting that they're going to drop a documentary on that. And I find what I find interesting about that is, first off, that they're going to drop a documentary about Freaknik in general, when Freaknik was never this like mainstream thing that a lot of people would be looking for a documentary for. It was like, if you were there, you know what happened. If you weren't there, you don't. Kind of like that. But that's an interesting thing. But they're going to drop a documentary about the 94 Freaknik, which I find a little bit interesting. Like, why would you specify that specific Freaknik? Because there was multiple Freakniks. It wasn't just the 94 Freaknik. So that's why I'm like, are you guys looking for something in particular? That it kind of triggers my spidey senses a little bit. I'm kind of like, oh, that's an interesting year to make a whole documentary off of if Freaknik wasn't only in 94. That's what it gave off to me. But I was like, I wasn't there. That was before my time. But just let it go. But starting to see that they're already planting the seeds to make this some big thing later on in the future, where they want to use the Freaknik from 94, and they're going to show it, and the kind of caption, not necessarily the big caption, but the underlying caption of it is going to be, look how animalistic black men are. Look at these black males and their sexual degeneracy and all of that stuff. This is going to make black women look like sexual degenerates too. Okay. They won't do that to anybody else. They wouldn't do that because everybody had, you had the girls going wild thing where white girls was doing the same thing that they was doing with Freaknik and all that stuff. So that stuff has happened before, but they're not going to do that. They're only going to do that with 94 Freaknik. And we're starting to see the seeds of the black man is the boogeyman being planted already. Take a look at this. First things first, let me give a shout out to our brother Torian Rain, because I found this clip from the live that he did where he talked about the same thing. So if you guys haven't seen that, you guys should go check that out. But they took this off of YouTube. I went on the griot on YouTube, searched up the clip, searched this all up on YouTube, and it's been removed. So I was able to find it on Torian's channel, so shout out to him. But let's continue.
Lot of noise is being made about this Freaknik documentary. A whole bunch of people talking about whose names and faces and voices and bodies are going to show up on this video from the 90s. And most of the conversation is about whether or not women will be exposed on this documentary, whether people's mamas and girlfriends and wives and daughters are going to show up in a Freaknik documentary. And I hear you. But that's the wrong issue. Look, I was outside in the 90s. I've been to Freaknik as an aspiring young journalist covering the story, of course. And when I was there, I saw what was happening. It's not just about women being half naked. It's not about women's hypersexuality. No, Freaknik is about men ogling, men fondling. Freaknik had a lot to do with male hypermasculinity and sexual violence. Freaknik is a rape fest. It is a sexual assault fest. That's not the only thing going on out there. I'm not trying to demonize or pathologize black people, but if we're talking about the worst parts of Freaknik, it wasn't about the actions of women. It was about the disgusting actions of us men. And so when you watch Freaknik, you don't need to be worried about mama, daughter, sister, girlfriend. You need to be worried about brother, son, husband, or yourself, and whether or not you were engaged in some of the worst parts of patriarchal culture, whether you were part of the worst parts of rape culture and misogyny and sexual violence. When we talk about Freaknik and the way we talk about Freaknik, it's a representation of all the problems we have in a society that always blames women for the actions of men. So don't check the women, check yourself.
Now I'm going to circle it back and I'm going to play it for you guys again, and I'm going to give my commentary to it.
A lot of noise is being made about this Freaknik documentary. A whole bunch of people talking about whose names and faces and voices and bodies are going to show up on this video from the 90s. And most of the conversation is about whether or not women will be exposed on this documentary, whether people's mamas and girlfriends and wives and daughters are going to show up in a Freaknik documentary. And I hear you, but that's the wrong issue.
Okay, number one, he's framing what the conversation about Freaknik is wrong, is incorrect. A lot of the women who participated willingly in Freaknik, they are concerned because now they have families, now they have careers. Back when they were, younger, doing their thing, when, in the 90s with the Freaknik, they don't want that resurfacing, and that, puts a bad image on them as a woman in the family, or that puts a bad image on them in their career. So they're worried about, oh man, I don't want that. It's not, he's making it seem like it's going to be, oh man, you women is going to look bad on you women, man, you slutty little women. That's not what it's about. A lot of the women are concerned about their own image. It's not the men finger wagging and slut shaming the women, like he would say.
Look, I was outside in the 90s. I've been to Freaknik as an aspiring young journalist covering the story, of course.
Oh, okay. That's very interesting because I Googled when Mark was born. Mark was born in December in 1978, which means by 94 Freaknik, Mark would have been 15 years old. So he's telling you that as a 15-year-old who most likely at that time would have a curfew and would not be allowed in any form to be able to go and then be allowed to go to a Freaknik, he's telling you, yeah, I was an inspiring young journalist at 15 years old at Freaknik. Really? Okay. I don't believe it.
And when I was there, I saw what was happening. It's not just about women being half naked. It's not about women's hypersexuality. No, Freaknik is about men ogling, men fondling. Freaknik had a lot to do with male hypermasculinity and sexual violence. Freaknik is a rape fest. It is a sexual assault fest.
Okay, so this is a talking point that his masters told him to get up here and say, because I've already explained that he was way too young to be participating in Freaknik, even as a young, inspiring journalist, so he claims. He wasn't there, and this is something that he was told to say. Now, when we talk about masculinity, he's like, oh, hypermasculinity or toxic masculinity, whatever talking point they like to use. Rape is not masculine at all. No masculine man at all thinks that rape is acceptable in any form. So for you to say rape is toxic masculinity or hypermasculinity, that's untrue, because masculine men hate rape, hate rapists. So that's just untrue. But his masters told him to say it, so he's saying it.
That's not the only thing going on out there. I'm not trying to demonize or pathologize black people. But if we're talking about the worst parts of Freaknik, it wasn't about the actions of women. It was about the disgusting actions of us men. And so when you watch Freaknik, you don't need to be worried about mama, daughter, sister, girlfriend. You need to be worried about brother, son, husband, or yourself, and whether or not you were engaged in some of the worst parts of patriarchal culture, whether you were part of the worst parts of rape culture and misogyny and sexual violence.
Okay, that's a talking point. Rape culture and sexual assault culture, all that stuff, that's a talking point from the left half of white supremacy. And they put that at the feet of black society. All right. Now, you want to talk about rape cultures, other races and ethnicities, they damn sure have a rape culture, but you don't see them getting on their media and demonizing the men, talking about, oh, you guys are this and rape culture and this and this and this. They don't point at their group of men, but Lamont Hill is pointing at black men because his masters told him to do that. Now, I'm just saying, this is the setup that they're planting for Freaknik, for the documentary Freaknik, which we know is from their masters, from Mark's masters, because he was not there.
When we talk about Freaknik and the way we talk about Freaknik, it's a representation of all the problems we have in a society that always blames women for the actions of men.
A society that always blames women for the actions of men. What is he talking about? That not black society. We don't do that. I don't know what he's talking about. And if he was talking about Freaknik, women voluntarily showed up to Freaknik. Nobody dragged anybody down to Freaknik and forced them to be there. All of the men and women that you see in the videos in Freaknik, they chose to be at Freaknik. Okay, that was what they chose to do. So nobody first off is blaming anybody for anything, and nobody's blaming women for the, like, what is, he doesn't even elaborate what he's talking about. That's why that's one of the last things he says, because that's the thing that doesn't make any sense. Well, none of what he said made any sense, but that's just a lie.
So don't check the women, check yourself.
Okay, nah, that's you can say, oh, that's just Lamont Hill. That's just Lamont Hill. But that's not it. Check out what The Root had to say about the Freaknik documentary coming up. But before we do that, before I show you that, let me show you, this is already what The Root feels, how The Root feels about straight black men. In 2017, The Root published an article titled "Straight Black Men Are the White People of Black People." This is saying that straight black men are the oppressors within black society. So we can already understand, before we go into this thing, we already see the twist that the griot is having with Lamont Hill. We already see that. We already know that The Root has a whole bunch of anti-straight black men narratives coming from The Root. But let's look at what The Root had to say about Freaknik. The title goes, "Here's why HBO's upcoming Freaknik documentary is making some black folks nervous." That's a picture of a guy who, I guess, got a Freaknik hat on. While an official trailer for Freaknik, The Wildest Party Never Told, has yet to be released, the streamers say the upcoming project recounts the rise and fall of a small Atlanta HBCU picnic that exploded into an influential street party and spotlighted ALT as a major cultural stage. Can the magic of Freaknik be brought back 40 years later? Sounds straightforward and intimidating enough, right? Well, it's unfortunately now proving to be intimidating for some who experienced Freaknik during its heyday, namely black women, because they're worried that their arguably reckless actions from back in the day will be broadcasted for the entire world to see. And if this is the case, they're also worried about what the implications and consequences will look like as a result of it, because misogyny is an unfair judge. Let me stop it right here, okay? They're worried. A lot of them are worried because a lot of them were young and didn't have kids at the time they were doing what they were doing. Now they have kids who are most likely adults. Some of them even have grandchildren. Some of the women who are at Freaknik even have young grandchildren. So they're worried that, okay, this is going to be broadcasted for the whole world to see. I don't want my grandbabies seeing me doing something very inappropriate with a bunch of random strangers. No, that's embarrassing. Any dignified woman wouldn't want that being broadcasted to the world. Her, because they was doing some freaky stuff at Freaknik. So she wouldn't want, her kids and her grandkids seeing that, especially if she's, grown past that. She wants to leave that behind. So that's not misogyny. That's just her wanting to have a dignified image in the eyes of her family. Continuing, in fact, in addition to numerous tweets and even TikTok videos of some black women speaking out about their nervousness for the upcoming doc, a handful of prominent black women professionals are even considering taking legal action against Hulu. According to News One, three C-suite executives and one judge are reportedly planning to file a lawsuit in Atlanta's federal court on the grounds that the doc is, quote, unlawful because they didn't sign any media releases. Though no official court documents have been seen, the fact that these women are willing to go so far out of fear that the footage could potentially be so detrimental to the life they've built now all these years later is telling. Now, let me stop right here. This article is framing it as, oh, these women, why women have to hide their backgrounds because of misogyny. This is already how the article is framing the situation. When in the reality of the situation, the only person that we know of that's really been fired and have to face major consequences because of footage from Freaknik is a black man. It was a black male officer who had a picture taken of him doing some stuff in Freaknik, at Freaknik, and when that resurfaced, he got fired. So this article is spinning this off as, oh, women have to face all these consequences. They have to hide their background because of misogyny. No, everybody who participated at Freaknik are kind of scared, are a little bit nervous about what is going to happen in this documentary. And black men, and the article's not going to say this, but it was a black man who's faced consequences. Yet the article is framing this as if, oh, the women have to go out of their way because of misogyny and they have to hide their past because no, that's not what it is. Nobody who's done something crazy and dirty wants that to pop back up when they have their professional careers on in the eyes of the public or even to their families. That's what this is about. This isn't no underlying we hate black women or misogyny thing going on. From the various footage and documentaries previously done about the festival, what we know was a grand old time for some of our older sisters, cousins, and aunties to enjoy themselves, enjoy good music, dance, and connect with other black folks. Rather, that connection came from popping out at red lights, twerking on them headlights, and that's a Gorilla verse from one of her songs, or engaging in some otherwise NSFW, not safe for work, activities. What's interesting to note is that the apprehension and over this, and it says and, yeah, I don't think they really meant that, apprehension and over this documentary is largely one-sided. As previously stated, black women are the main ones getting up in arms over the fun and carefree days of their youth being caught in 4K because they know that society unjustly issues them harsher judgment and repercussions for appearing or even acting outside of the realm of respectability. Now, as I previously just stated to you all, a black man has been fired. He's lost his career because of an image that was caught in well, it wasn't 4K, but that was caught of him participating in actions in Freaknik. So this article is trying to make it seem like society, we put this standard on black women. There's punishments for black women that don't exist for black men. That is not true. That's not true at all. Being caught doing crazy stuff at Freaknik is going to be damaging for black men too, and it already has been damaging, and the documentary isn't even out yet. But yet this article is trying to create this narrative that black women are especially and particularly oppressed and held by stricter stigma and repercussions in society, and that is not true. But what's important to note is that Freaknik wasn't just attended by black women. It was also attended by black men, our older brothers, cousins, and uncles, who were engaged in similar behavior, but also may have been engaged in some more nefarious happenings, namely rapid sexual assault and rape as well. Same thing Mark Lamont Hill was saying. That's the same thing. So you know these people have the same masters and the same talking points. It's no coincidence at all that these people are saying the exact same thing. Or a lot of people think it's going to be black women who are in trouble, but it's the black men because they was raping. The same exact thing. It continues to say, in fact, in the week since Hulu's announcement, Twitter has been ablaze with snippets from the previous documentaries that show women and men recounting the more horrific, lewd underbelly of the festival. Okay, then they showed some tweets from some suspected feminist accounts. I've been seeing this. This is a anti-black male feminist, and then some LGBT folks who are just sitting up there attacking straight black men. But some of the videos and images that they display are not very appropriate. So you're just going to have to use your imagination or just kind of guess around what's going to happen. Maybe look it up yourself. But, it was some, people, women walking by, and then a stranger just like reach out and grab her ass or whatever the case is, which is inappropriate. The thing that they're trying to make it seem like that was all black men, or that's like in the culture of black men. That's why Freaknik stopped, because you had a whole bunch of thirsty dudes trying to do that, trying to just, be all thirsty with it, just reaching out, grabbing women's ass just out of the blue. Like, that's corny and thirsty. And most of the men, first off, weren't on that and don't approve of that. That's one of the reasons why it started to get wrapped up. Less people started to go to Freaknik because of that. Because of all of the thirsty dudes who were sitting up there acting out. So, yeah, there was some thirsty dudes. Every party you get, there's going to be some alcohol. There's going to be some thirsty dudes who just think, okay, she ain't looking, I'm going to slap her ass real quick, which is corny. And that is corny. But most men who are there, and most black men, aren't on that type of page. So while some black women may be nervous for being outed for being carefree, some black men ought to be a bit more nervous for possibly being outed for far more dangerous and criminal things. But to be clear, this isn't an attack on black men. Now, they always say that. They always frame an attack on black men. They speak generally, speak about the culture, and then they talk about, oh, this isn't an attack on black men, but it is an attack on black men. They say it isn't an attack on black men, as some online have portrayed it to be, to show the ugly truths about a portion of people in our community shouldn't be perceived as a part of some hidden agenda, but it is. It is a hidden agenda. Anyway, it should be perceived as a call to action for accountability, a serious conversation about consent and sexual violence. It also shouldn't be taken as an opportunity to engage in whataboutism with regards to white people and the things they've seemingly gotten away with. Seemingly, they have, and they always have. We don't say anything about them seemingly getting away. We talk about how the fact that the media, the quote unquote old black media, the media that's supposed to be for black people, speaking up for black people, they're always trying to frame black men in this negative, animalistic, criminal light that white media does not do to white men. So this isn't, oh, they seemingly gotten away with it. They do, and they don't care about it. And then it goes on to say, and yes, I'm talking about you all. There's a documentary on Girls Gone Wild, folks. Literally, go look it up. It's all there. Here's the thing, though. When the documentary was released on Girls Gone Wild, you didn't have a whole bunch of feminists and a whole bunch of people from their media talking about, oh my God, you're going to lock up all these white men. It's going to show the rape culture in white men. Oh, white men be sexually assaulting. They didn't market it like that. They didn't plant the seeds of Girls Gone Wild into that. It was just, oh, girls just having fun, and, they went wild. But the Root and the Griot, they're marketing at this as literally a rape fest. That's not what they did with Girls Gone Wild. However, the negative stories of the festival seem to hold little weight with people, especially seeing how an attempt to bring Freaknik back just happened as recently in 2019. As previously reported by The Root, thanks to Luther, Uncle Luke Campbell, and rappers Trina and Juvenile, and I already did a whole video or a whole live on Uncle Luke, so we already know he's a coon. The festival, it continues to say, the festival received to a degree, with many R&B and hip-hop artists coming down to perform as well as participate in community service projects. This was deemed beneficial to both people who hold the festival in high regard in the city of Atlanta as far as revenue is concerned. All in all, what should be noted is that we really have no clue what the new HBO documentary will show. But what we can hope for is that it shows the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth of a once beloved festival that brings back memories to so many people for so many different reasons. Our people, our community is owed that much. So as we can see, they're already planting the seeds so they can turn this Freaknik into, oh my God, look how bad black men are. And here's the important thing that we all have to remember about this. They use black people, black websites like The Root. They use black channels, or supposedly black channels like the Griot. They use black men, allegedly, like Lamont Hill. They use them so that way they can come out on the offense first. And then that way, when it's time to start rolling out the punishments, they be like, hey, well, it's not a race thing. You can't say it's a race thing. I mean, Mark ain't Mark black? I mean, ain't the Griot, ain't they black? I mean, come on now. The Root, come on, that's black. Now you can't say it's a black thing. So they always do this. They get their coons, they get their Sambos, they get their mammies, they get their bed bucks and bed wenches to talk against black society. So when the dominant society comes in and starts issuing out punishment, and they always over punish. First off, they look for things to punish anyway. And then when they do, they will always over punish. And then they have the excuse because they prefaced their agenda, their anti-black agenda with well, Mark said, now Mark is black now, so you can't say it's a race thing, because you guys, the blacks, even admit that this was a race problem. The blacks even admit that's your culture. Mark said that you guys have a rape culture. That's what Mark said. Mark said that. So don't get mad at me. This isn't a race thing. They always do that. That's why the coons are the pawns on the chessboard of white supremacy. They will use the coons every single time first. They're the first ones to move. They're the least important, but they're the first ones to move. They're the first sacrifices. Okay? They're the ones who get up there and they set everything else for the bigger pieces to come in and start winning the game. That's what the coons are used for. So when the coons go out there and they say stuff like, "Oh, black culture is so bad. Black culture, black men are so evil. Black women are so degenerate and so unsophisticated." When they say stuff like that, and then white people act out what the talking points that were given to them, because it's no coincidence that the Root and Lamont Hill, there's no coincidence that they have the exact same talking points. That means that this was given to them. This was given to them by higher ups saying, okay, we got this documentary. We announced that we're coming out with it. You guys go plant the seeds right now. So when the documentary blows up, the seeds have already been planted, and then it's going to sprout right around that time. And then bam, we got you. Plus, there's already a bunch of divestors and bed winches and swirlers and stuff like that, given the same exact talking points. This is coming from the top, y'all. This is coming from the top. So we have to be very careful. And it's very interesting that they're going after the 94 one specifically, almost as if they're looking to get a particular person or a particular incident or something like that. It almost seems like a target. The fact that they're just not talking about, oh, let's talk about the Freaknik summers. There is not a Freaknik summer, is 94 Freaknik. Why not 97? Why not 96, 95? Like, why 94? What's special about 94 Freaknik? You know, so we have to be aware of that. Brothers and sisters, I want to know what you guys think in the comment section below. Please let me know. What do you think about what Freaknik is? I don't know. Have you been to Freaknik? What do you guys think about it? What do you think about what the Groot, Lamont Hill, what do you think about what they're saying about Freaknik? Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Also, you can follow me on my social media pages, which is at Afro Elite on Instagram and at the Afro Elite on Twitter. Please, before you leave, do not forget to hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and hit that like button. And with that being said, my brothers and sisters, be one salute to every single last one of you all, and you all have a good one.